So you've heard it a couple of times today, so I'm just going to say it again. I love you, and I can prove it. You know, a lot of times, as a minister, there's only a couple of times a year where you actually know what you're going to talk about, right? There's a couple of dates that come to mind. Thanksgiving, that's going to be a gratitude talk. Absolutely, right? Christmas, enlightenment, right? Christ consciousness, this is good stuff. Easter, renewal, and Valentine's Day. So you know you're going to talk about love on Valentine's Day. And we have spent so much time as people talking about what we think love is. Right? So on Valentine's Day, Hallmark would have you know that you are required to buy a car and a card to go with it for your dear one, or a diamond that costs about as much as the car or the card to go with it, and that you will give them to them and they will get all warm and gushy and you will feel that feeling of love. Right? I'm hoping my wife does that for me. Not particularly counting on it. But what that feeling is that moment where we're with somebody that we truly, deeply care about. And we're, you know, it can be an intimate relationship, it can be a friendship, it can be any one of a number of relationships that we have with another individual where our barriers come down. Where we feel that we can be authentic with the person who we are engaged with. That we don't have to be anybody else than who we are. And they understand that, and you have that same feeling about them. And we merge together in the soul in that moment of that feeling. And it's all warm and fuzzy, right? And we look for that. Sometimes we spend years looking for that feeling, or chasing after that feeling of being accepted for who we are without having to put on any of this show. You see, we go through life building up thoughts about what love is. When we're young, it's that sweep me away off my feet and I'll be trudging down the road of happy destiny for the rest of my life. We get a little older and it becomes that special one with whom I want to partner up and share my life with. We get a little older and we hope that it stays that way. But our idea of what love is changes. And this idea that it's just this warm, fuzzy feeling that we're chasing after is all good. And that is something we experience. But there's another kind of love. There is the love that impels us to act. And this is the spiritual love of life itself working through us to express a greater version of its being in us. That's the New Thought version of love. Love is God becoming us, becoming life. To experience the connection of discovering that through our experiences, through our interactions, through our relationships, through our activities, through our thoughts. And all of this unfolds into something that moves us into action. So the warm, fuzzy feeling that we're looking for, that moved us into a lot of action, right? Buying cards, roses, dinners, all sorts of things in pursuit of that feeling of acceptance. I'm here to tell you at the moment that you are accepted just as you are. God always accepts you just as you are. Because God is love. And there is no flip side to that. There is only love. And in New Thought, we say that all the time. And sometimes it requires us to change our thinking a little bit about what love might be when we say everything is love. That was love? Apply to that whatever situation comes to mind. When we move into that idea that everything is love, it's kind of hard when we're in the conditional part of life to look at things and say, that's love? Really? But yes, it is. It's the love that is creation itself coming through whatever is unfolding for a better consciousness and a higher understanding And as we can turn away from looking at a condition to the truth that there is only love, we can begin to see the good in something we might call bad. The silver lining in what looks like a distressing situation. Or the requirement for us to act in a different way. So I said at the beginning of this that I can prove that I love you. And some of you have heard me say this before. This is one of my all-time favorite non-New Thought statements. It was by M. Scott Peck. Because when I was young, I went around looking for what the definition of love was. Because I had some ideas from experience about what I thought it was, and most of that was not love. It was another L word. Or it was some other expression that was not complete and whole. And then I found this when I was in my 20s, and I've been living by it as best I can. And his statement of love is the willingness to extend oneself for the spiritual growth of oneself or another. Now that's a different definition of love. That's a practical definition of love. See, it's kind of hard to work around warm fuzzy, right? Okay, I'm going to run around all over the place looking for how to be warm and fuzzy, or how to feel warm and fuzzy, and feel accepted and loved for just who I am, but I don't really have any guidance on how I'm going to do that. But when we take the idea that love is this extension of who and what we are for our own spiritual development. Okay, so we start going to classes, we come to Sunday celebrations, we do yoga, we meditate, we pray, we open our minds and our lives to different ideas so that we can develop our spiritual self and grow into a greater understanding so that we can get to the place where everything is love. See, the great avatars of human history have all said the same thing. God is love, and all there is love. And then there's a bunch of guidelines and any given religion that you want to follow to experience that. But when we take that in our own personal expression of life and we work towards growing our spiritual experience so that we can actually know that we are loved and are being loving, that statement gives us some benchmark. We can say, okay, am I spiritually growing by the activity that I am undertaking now? Is this benefiting my consciousness? And as we say in New Thought, that's called change your thinking. Because that's where the primary cause starts. It starts in our thinking. And then we get to the feeling part of it, which is nice. But if we're sitting around looking at the world and saying, they did that to me, or those people are terrible, or that's just atrocious, what are we thinking? You see, it's a responsive universe. It's going to respond to us because we're an expression of God's divine intelligence as love, embodied here, and the universe works for us by responding to what we're thinking. So when you spew hate, guess what you get to experience? Hey, who's spewing the hate? Right? Doesn't matter what they say, because here's a big one, they is us. For those of you who remember that. They is us. There is no they. There is only one. One love expressing through and as absolutely everything. So when you find yourself saying they, I invite you to try to change that thought to we are doing some things that I don't like. This is how love works in our personal lives. So then perhaps we see a situation or a condition that we would like to change. And that's great. We can change our thinking. That's the first step. But we have to be clear about what it is that we want to experience. Right? So we want more love, more harmony, more life, more prosperity, more joy, more peace. Not just for ourselves, but for the world. I'm the utopianist in this social community here. I have a belief that we can actually reach a place of utopia in which love rules and there is enough for all, and everybody's objective in life is to be the best creative expression of love and life that they can be, and that each one of us matters. And that there's enough for everybody. so that we don't have to do the silly stuff that we're doing in many parts of the world or country. I completely lost where I was because that vision just took me over for a moment and I was seeing this wonderful place to be. Oh yes, but when we see something that we don't think is love, we have to remind ourselves that in our consciousness, we're the ones who are responsible for thinking first that, yes, this is love, let me see how that's requiring me to respond. And this is where love is impelling us to move. Not to be warm and fuzzy, but to be actively alive and clear of consciousness and concise in our idea of what we wish to experience and active along the lines of all of those things. So first we may need to pray and meditate about what it is that we truly want to see happen, as opposed to sit and complain. Because guess what? If you're complaining, guess what you're getting? More of what you're complaining about. And I know that's redundant, but I can't be strong enough about this. It begins in our consciousness about how we experience life. And the whole of life changes as the whole of our consciousness, individually and collectively, changes to a higher idea of love, of peace, of joy, of prosperity, of equality, of justice, whatever that might be. When we are impelled by this idea of love, and love can be a stern taskmaster. I'm going to give you a little example. How many people here have run across a homeless person who has been asking for money? Too much of that going on. How many people have ever had the experience that the first impulse was to reach in your pocket and give him something, but you didn't do it? And you couldn't look him in the eye. And then you thought, as you left that situation, why do I feel like I should have done something there? See, what that is the impulsion of love moving you to act in compassion and understanding that we are one. See, because most of us, it's a prosperous universe, most of us wouldn't miss the quarter, the buck, the $5, the $10, or the $100 in the course of your life if you pulled it out of your pocket and gave it to the person who was challenged in their thinking that this is not an abundant universe and needed some expression of compassion to remind them that they too are whole and complete. An expression of a divine idea brought into this world to experience life in its fullness. So this idea that love is a stern taskmaster moves us into responding. So if we're going around saying, I want to be more loving, that's the initial thought. I want to be more loving. You need to be more loving. You can't say, I want to be more loving and F you. It doesn't work. You're spewing hate, not love. And I know this because I found myself doing this the other day. I live in New Jersey. I'm sorry. And I was going back over from Sunday celebration last week, and I get off the bridge, the expressway to go over the bridge, the Ben Franklin Bridge. And always, without fail, you come down the ramp for the bridge, and there's a couple of guys with various signs working the bridge for looking for change or whatever you're willing to spare. And sometimes I'm like, okay, here's a buck, and sometimes like, yeah, not today. But this one guy walked up to me last week, and I wanted to give. I was being moved to give, but I didn't have any money. There was no change in my change cup in the car, and I didn't have any, here's where love gets strong, okay? I had a $10 bill in my pocket. But I was unwilling to share my wealth at that level. I was unwilling to be the compassionate, loving person that I envision myself being, and trusting that in giving I receive. So I didn't do that. And my soul contracted a little bit. And I became ashamed of who I am and how I acted. That I would express love, not minutes before, in a Sunday celebration, and then find myself in that situation. And what it reminded me was we spend a lot of time responding to fear and not love. And sometimes the fear is in our own head. I might need that $10. There's not enough. Remember, it all begins in consciousness. And when we want to be love in a practical sense, we actually have to contradict our own thinking of fear and withdraw from life and have the courage to step out and be compassionate and be faithful that there is indeed enough, that we can live a better life, that my giving this person some money is not a detriment to them. That's the other game we play. If I give him, he's just going to get drunk with that. Is that your business? Not really. Not really. The impulsion of love is for you to be compassionate and give and not worry about the results. That one's above your pay grade. It's above all of our pay grade. See, because when we're giving and expecting something to happen for it, we're not giving, we're trading. That's actually not love, that's commerce. Right? Nothing wrong with that, but don't call it what it's not. When we give of love, we give of ourselves. We extend ourselves for the spiritual growth of ourselves or another. The other thing that this requires of us when we're doing this is the second part of that, or another. Sometimes we want love to be this warm, fuzzy feeling. And sometimes it just ain't. Sometimes love means that we have to stand up in courage and shout at the top of our lungs that this is wrong. That we must do something that feels very difficult for us to do personally, but is indeed the right thing. And it's very difficult sometimes to discern whether that's the right thing or just you're being angry. You know, I suggest if you find yourself in a condition like that, at least do this. I'm going to ask you to do this. Close your eyes for a second. Take a deep breath. Guide my thinking. Say that to yourself. Guide my thinking. Okay, you can open your eyes. That's all it takes to move from a place of withdrawal to a place of opening up and allowing consciousness to move you in the right direction and provide you with all of the power and the strength and the courage required for you to stand in the truth of what you love. So, the practical form of love requires us to evolve. So if we want to feel and be love all the time, I invite you to do things that evolve your spirit into a greater awareness of the truth of its authenticity. See, because you've already got all that you require. Everything that you could require has already been given. It is up to us to evolve our consciousness to a place where we know that, first in our mind, and then in our heart. And then we can be love. And so to prove my point that I love you, I'm willing to stand up here on Sunday morning and bare my soul for you guys to hopefully grow. That's my definition of love. And I love you. Namaste.